Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have a detailed hemp news segment for you tonight. And our guest tonight is Miss Dank, Nickie D Dank Gates. And she will be talking about her plans on the upcoming 420 celebration and our trip to Mexico in October. So we'll be talking to her about that. And we have a tribute to Bobby Nelson, Willie Nelson's sister and piano player, a 50-year in his band, and a friend of mine who I had a medical marijuana permit to protect and grow for. I met many times. We have a little tribute that the Farm Aid organization put together. Willie Nelson's the president and founder of Farm Aid, and they put together a tribute that we'll play at the end of the show. So without further ado, we'll bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first hemp news story tonight. 2 Oregon counties have declared a local state of emergency regarding cannabis, allowing them to place moratoriums on issuing new hemp licenses, according to the Mail Tribune. These orders in Jackson and Josephine counties are retroactive to January 1st, and all applications submitted since the new year will be denied. Jackson County Senior Deputy Administrator Harvey Bragg told the Mail Tribune that county officials, quote, need to kind of get a time out, end quote, so they can catch up on applications and enforcement. Last year, state inspectors found 53% of licensed hemp grown in Jackson and Josephine counties were illegally growing cannabis under the guise of hemp, the report says. Throughout 2021, law enforcement agencies in Southern Oregon have uncovered a host of issues at illegal cannabis grows, including workers living in poor conditions, water theft in a region hard hit by drought, improper use of pesticides and other chemicals, garbage, electrical hazards, and evidence of drug trafficking. Officials believe organized crime networks are backing many of the illegal cultivation sites. A Mail Tribune investigation found that law enforcement agencies in Jackson, Josephine, Klamath, and Douglas counties found illegal cannabis with an estimated value of at least $2.78 billion in the unregulated market. In all, the state sold $1.2 billion worth of cannabis through licensed shops last year. A recently approved Oregon law requires the state to deny any application for new hemp licenses in counties that declare a state of emergency related to cannabis. Other bills passed in the state to deal with problems related to cannabis include funding to organizations that help exploited workers and a ban on hauling water to unlicensed grows. Across the river in Washington state, the State Liquor and Cannabis Board has adopted pesticide testing mandates for cannabis products sold in the state. Finally, the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board, or LCB, has adopted the final rules mandating all cannabis products sold in Washington undergo pesticide tests, according to an agency press release. Effective April 2nd, the rules call for random heavy metal tests, or during an investigation, some time will be given for products to sell through. So what they have currently on the shelf can sell through, said Board Chair David Postman. He said, quote, testing for pesticides and heavy metals adds a deeper layer of confidence for consumers that these products are free of chemical or biological residuals, end quote. The press release notes heavy metals can be present in environment for a variety of reasons, like mining operations, industrial waste, automotive emissions, or farm or household water runoff. Washington tests medical cannabis under its Department of Health certification program, but only 4 producers and processors in the entire state of Washington undergo the more rigorous pesticides and heavy metal tests required to qualify for the program. Back in Washington, D.C., federal lawmakers kept a GOP ban on marijuana sales in the District of Columbia this week. The ban's in government funding bill passed by Congress. Activists said the provisions override the will of the district's residents years after they voted to legalize cannabis. The Harris Ride is what it's called. It's a provision barring the legalization of adult use marijuana sales in the District of Columbia. It coasted through the United States Senate late Thursday as part of a spending bill. It passed the House a day earlier as part of a $1.5 billion package. The provision's chief proponent is obnoxious, weed-hating conservative Representative Andy Harris, a Republican from Maryland. I'm surprised and deeply disappointed by both the House and Senate's inability to negotiate on behalf of Washingtonians, especially on one of the most bipartisan issues in the country. Congressional Democrats had pushed to do away with the provision. They opted not to include the Harris rider in the funding bill unveiled by the appropriations in both the House and Senate last year. But lawmakers put the rider back in after loud howls of protest from weed-hating Republicans. After all, if legal cannabis sales happened in the nation's capital, it would highlight their stark prohibitionist hypocrisy. In a nationwide survey by the National Cannabis Industry Association, or NCIA, I used to be on their board when they first founded, and Whitney Economics, who was the head of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission back when marijuana became legal. But this survey by the NCIA and Whitney Economics found 37% of cannabis businesses in the United States are not profitable. Of the 396 cannabis businesses around the country that were surveyed, only 42% were found to be profitable, while 21% felt their investments were breaking even, according to the survey results. The NCIA survey highlights some specific challenges facing the industry, like competition from the illicit market and overtaxation. Additionally, lack of access to banking and price volatility were noted in potential stumbling blocks for cannabis entrepreneurs. Bo Whitney, the founder of Whitney Economics and former head of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, described the results as, quote, no surprise. He said, quote, the narrative out there is that everyone's swimming in cash because of cannabis. But for many, unless you have $2.5 million to $3 million, you're not able to cover a loan or rent or health care, end quote. This next story was an issue during President Donald Trump's first impeachment hearing. Andrei Mureviev, a 47-year-old Russian billionaire who set out in 2018 to acquire U.S. cannabis industry licenses, was indicted last week and charged with making illegal political contributions as a foreign national. Mureviev, who is currently believed to be at large in Russia, was also charged with conspiring to make political contributions as a foreign national in the name of straw donors, or fake donors. According to the release by the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, Mureviev allegedly conspired with Lev Parnas and Andrei Kukishin and Igor Fruman to give up to $1 million in foreign funds as political contributions to candidates and campaigns that would benefit his business interests. The donations were meant to curry favor with the state and federal candidates in Florida, Nevada, and Texas, who could later help Mureviev and his co-conspirators acquire marijuana industry licenses. Parnas and Kukishin were found guilty for their involvement in the scheme last October, while Furman pled guilty in January. Parnas and Furman are both associates of Rudy Giuliani, the former mayor of New York City and personal attorney for former President Donald Trump. In that article. Our next story is kind of amusing. You want to lend an ear and learn something, or maybe just munch on one? Mike Tyson's Cannabis brand has launched an ear-shaped marijuana edible. This comes 25 years after Tyson was disqualified from the World Boxing Association Heavyweight Championship for biting his opponent's ears. Tyson's marijuana brand, Tyson 2.0, named the new products with a smirking reference to what's become known as the Bite Fight. That's the bout against Evander Holyfield where the infamous incident took place. These aren't your average gummies. Mite bites are ear-shaped, complete with a missing chunk of the ear. According to Tyson 2.0, gummies will soon go on sale in dispensaries in Massachusetts, California, and Nevada. The retired boxer and current cannabis impresario even put his stamp of appeal on the marijuana-infused edibles, writing, "These ears actually taste good," end quote. Mike Bites ears have a bite mark at the top of the gummy. There's a chunk missing right where Mike Tyson bit off a piece of the Holyfield's ear cartilage. Tyson pitched the idea of the gummies to Holyfield back in 2019 on an episode of Mike Tyson's podcast called Hot Boxing. Tyson 2.0, in business since 2016, makes about $1 million a month, according to Macara, and the Boxing Commission fined Tyson $3 million for biting Holyfield's ear off back in 1997. Washington, D.C., the U.S. Department of Transportation has proposed changes to existing federal drug testing guidelines that would allow for the use of oral fluid testing, or saliva, as an alternative to urinalysis for those working in the transportation industry. The agency proposed the rule change in February 28 edition of the Federal Register, opining, quote, "This will give employers a choice that will help combat employee cheating on urine testing and provide a more economical, less intrusive means of achieving the safety goals of the program," end quote. Oral fluid tests typically detect either THC or its metabolites for a period of 1 to 2 days after exposure, a timetable that's significantly shorter than that associated with urinalysis. Urinalysis may detect the presence of carbonized THC for weeks or even months following abstinence. Federal law mandates commercial drivers to routinely undergo marijuana urinalysis testing. In recent months, federal statistics have identified the suspension of over 72,000 truck drivers as a result of failed drug tests. Over half of those failed tests were for the past use of marijuana. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services proposed in the Federal Register expanding federal drug testing guidelines to include the hair follicle test. To date, however, that proposal has not been finalized. We advocate the use of performance testing technology rather than drug detection technology to determine whether someone may be impaired while on the job. The full text of the proposed rules is available from the United States Federal Register online. In South Dakota, lawmakers have finalized legislation protecting patients' home cultivation rights. Lawmakers have advanced legislation to the South Dakota governor's desk protecting patients' abilities to home cultivate limited amounts of medical cannabis. As amended, South Dakota Senate Bill 24 allows qualified patients to home cultivate a total of 4 marijuana plants, 2 mature or flowering and 2 immature or not flowering. Permitting limited home cultivation provides patients with the ability to have reliable, affordable, and consistent access to the medicine they rely on. Voters in November 2020 overwhelmingly decided in favor of a ballot measure 26, permitting qualified patients to possess, grow, and purchase medical cannabis. However, South Dakota's House lawmakers have since made several attempts to strip away patients' ability to home cultivate cannabis. In January, South Dakota lawmakers advanced legislation to the Senate prohibiting home grows. That legislation was defeated by senators in committee. The Senate lawmakers later passed their own bill explicitly permitting patients to home cultivate a total of 6 plants. However, House lawmakers amended this language to once again prohibit patients' home cultivation rights. The bill then went to conference committee where House and Senate leaders compromised on the new 4-plant limit. The bill now goes to Republican Governor Kristi Noem, who publicly opposed medical marijuana in Measure 26. In Alberta, Canada, the magnitude of cannabis influence on driving performance is far less than that of alcohol, according to systemic and meta-analysis published in the journal Addiction. Canadian researchers analyzed data from 57 studies assessing the influence of cannabis and alcohol on driving behavior and crash risk. They acknowledged that cannabis exposure was typically associated with deviations in drivers' lateral positioning or lane weaving and a decrease in their average speed. So marijuana use causes people to go slow. Cannabis use was, quote, not associated with an increase in crashes in experimental studies, end quote. The authors also found, quote, no compelling evidence that cannabis influenced hazard response time, headway variability, time out of lane, speed vulnerability, speed exceedance, or time speed, end quote. They concluded, quote, specifically for the measures reported here, there are no instances where the average effect of cannabis is equal to or greater than the driving performance decrements associated with a blood alcohol concentration ranging from 0.04 to 0.06%, end quote. Since 0.08 is the legal limit for alcohol blood content, cannabis's effect is lower than that. This study, The Effects of Cannabis and Alcohol on Driving Performance and Driving Behavior, a Systemic Review and Meta-Analysis, appears in this month's edition of Addiction. Our last story tonight is from Philadelphia. Osteoarthritis patients significantly decrease their daily opioid intake and experience improvements in their overall quality of life following the initiation of medical cannabis therapy, according to data published in the journal Curis. Investigators affiliated with Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia evaluated opioid consumption patterns in a cohort of 40 patients with osteoarthritis during 6 months immediately prior and immediately following their enrollment in the state's medical cannabis access program. On average, the subjects nearly halved their daily opioid intake by the end of the trial period. Nearly 40% of participants ceased using opioids altogether. Patients also reported reductions in pain and an overall improvement in their quality of life. The authors concluded, quote, our findings indicate that providing access to medical cannabis helps patients with chronic pain due to osteoarthritis reduce their levels of opioid usage in addition to improving pain and quality of life. Furthermore, a majority of patients did not feel intoxicated or high from medical cannabis, and those who did, only a small percentage said it interfered with their daily activities. Our findings support the literature in that medical cannabis reduces the use of opioids for the treatment of chronic pain, end quote. Separate findings published by the same team similarly reported that patients with chronic back pain reduced their daily opioid intake following their enrollment in Pennsylvania's medical access program. That finding is consistent with dozens of other studies documenting patients' tapering of opioids and other prescription medications subsequent to their use of medical cannabis. This study, medical cannabis use reduces opioid prescriptions in patients with osteoarthritis, appears in Cure Us. That's the end of our hemp news story tonight. If you are a loved one or looking for a doctor who can help you obtain a medical marijuana permit, then you can call our office at 503-235-4606. If you have questions about medical marijuana, industrial hemp, cannabis laws in general, traveling with cannabis, give me a call at 503-235-4606. Now we have an interview with Nikki Gates, Miss Dank herself. She'll be talking about her upcoming 420 party and our recent trip to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where we ran into a couple of instances that we'll talk about. And at the very end, we have a tribute to the late, great Bobby Nelson, the pianist for Willie Nelson's band, and his sister and longtime companion and associate. So stay tuned. We're going to bring it down now and help restore hemp. Good night. Hello, I would like to welcome back on our show our longtime friend and associate, Nickie D Dank. Welcome back to the show, Nikki.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Hi,
So,
Paul.
hey, you have been an activist here forever. You, well,
Not
17
as long
years.
as you.
17 years, which is a pretty long time. You've
That's
helped
pretty
us
good.
on our Hemp Stock Festival, and you had a
08,
social cannabis
started
club.
in 08 with you.
Yeah, you had a cannabis club over in Southeast Portland, the other spot,
I did.
with your late husband, Mike Gates,
I did.
who was a good friend of mine and our...
And also Jesse and Mary.
yeah,
Can't forget them.
can't forget them.
No.
Glad you remember.
Yes, it
Um,
was a wonderful time, and it was very well needed at that time
Yeah.
because there weren't any cannabis clubs open then.
But the indoor air quality thing made the city come after you and said you have to shut down or you'll be fined big bucks, right?
I did some interesting things when we were there. I allowed open the door. It's a private club, you know, so it's members only. But I had the state come to my door and some different, you know, agencies and asked to come inside, and I let them in, and willingly. And,
was this during operational hours?
This was.
Okay.
And there was approximately, I don't know, 9 or 10 patients at that time in the building, because we had not gone recreational. And so there was patients sitting there in the building, and I thought, well, why not let them in? Because this gives the patients a chance to ask all the questions that they've been wanting to ask directly.
Did they ask a lot of questions?
Yes, they sure did, and they made those people feel very uncomfortable. And unfortunately, yeah, when the Clean Air Act came into play and they added cannabinoids, it did a disservice to us and
so
to a lot
the
of
other
patients.
spot opened and closed when?
So that would have to be, let's see, 2017, right around 2017, I believe. We had to close. We opened on a New Year's and basically closed on a New Year's. So we were open almost a year. But that place did a lot of great things while it was open. We did a lot of memorial services for people who had passed in the community. We're lacking that now. Places for those kind of events to be held for our people that we love, that people have been a part of our family, not maybe our direct family that we're born into, but our family that we create along the way. And
I remember our friend John Walsh, who gathered more signatures on legalization
than anybody
over
in the
a
state
number
of Oregon,
years.
right?
Yeah, and he passed away, and we had a service there. And for our friend Ray Crystal, before he passed away, we celebrated his life since he knew he was going. So.
And the attorney,
Stuart Sugarman, came. He was there at John Walsh's memorial. Then about a month later, he passed away. So it's the last place I saw him, and his old law partner, Paul Loney, had seen him as well.
Yep.
But you also worked up in Tacoma and with the world-famous Cannabis Cafe, right?
Oh, yeah.
So do you want to talk about those?
And I'm just
super So the world-famous Cannabis Cafe was here in Portland.
It absolutely was.
With Madeline Martinez.
Absolutely.
Who's been on the show many times. Hi, Madeline.
And one of your, she used to be one of your co-hosts, right? Or
she's been on the show many times.
Yeah, on the show a lot. Back in those days. I remember you and her on the show. That was the first show I ever watched.
Oh, okay.
Okay. That you were interviewing her, you guys were talking about.
Yeah, she came on many times. But, so you want to talk about the world-famous Cannabis Cafe? You worked there for a long time.
I was there a long time.
And it kind of was a groundbreaking
in two different
business.
Places, at Deacom and on 82nd for Madeline and the Martinez family, and it was
the first cannabis consumption lounge in America.
Sure was.
Yeah, they got a lot of publicity from media all over the world.
There's been a lot of, of course, there's always people that say, "Oh no, I had something over here at this time," or "I had something." That was the first known and rightfully known, and in news, like Paul said, on news media in different countries, came to interview Madeline. It was something else. It was a lot of fun because it also in those days, sorry bud tenders, I'm no slam on bud tending or that title, but when bud tending started and was existing with the cafes and you were behind the counter, people truly could pick the kind of strain that they wanted to smoke or vaporize, and then that's what you would fill in whatever instrument they were using to medicate in those days. So that was truly bud tending, honest to gosh, because they got to pick the different things, and it was actually putting those things together for people.
There was a lot of trailblazing. You're in Portland. It's trailblazing.
Lots of trailblazing. Yes.
Right. So, but you're on the show now to promote an upcoming event. So it's on April 20th, which has become a semi-official cannabis holiday. Last year, the majority leader of the United States Senate sent out a tweet saying Happy 420.
Yes.
And so you're organizing an April 20th 420 event. And this year that's on a Wednesday.
It is. And that, I'm kind of, Wednesday's a good day. It's hump day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So to help everybody get over that hump when Thursday comes, they'll be more prepared. Oh, we only got a couple days left of work.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, we have had this pandemic going on for now, over 2 years.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people recently that I've been running into and seeing that I haven't seen in years in our community that are now coming out because fear really kept them inside their homes.
Sure.
I've heard that multiple times.
Me too.
And so I was thinking to myself that there needed to be some kind of a positive celebration and maybe honoring some people that have never been truly honored in their own state with all the work that they've put in here. Most of you wouldn't be doing some of the things you do in this particular field of work in cannabis if it wasn't for this gentleman sitting to the right of me, or Madeline, or Anna Diaz, or Paul Loney, or
Dr. Philip Levesque.
The lists go
Keith
on,
Strop,
or just
Dr. Todd McGrath.
yes.
The list goes on.
Yeah, it really is enormous. And a lot of us when we take on the word activist, I think a lot of us put the act into it. And some people don't choose to do it that way. Maybe they choose to carry a sign around and march, and that's the way that they feel that's how they express honored.
So you're going to have an event. It looks like the doors will open at 3:30 and close at 9. And
They actually will go till midnight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so you'll have live music for some period there and guest DJs.
Yes, and I can actually mention a few things.
And it will be a cannabis-friendly environment.
Yes, and
you won't be thrown out for using
Mac
cannabis.
and Dub are going to perform. We have a special guest coming from Las Vegas, Nevada. I don't know if anybody can guess who that might be.
Pony Boy and Los Marijuanos.
And so Pony's coming, and we're super excited about that. Bad Habitat's performing. Nick, Drew, and Matt. I'm so happy. I love those guys so much. Young Gates is performing, my son, that's just got on Apple Music and Spotify and moving on up in his music.
He's had some real progress lately, hasn't he?
He's doing really well, and he's doing a lot of collaborations with people now, and it's cool to see him grow.
So tickets will be available for this?
Yeah, we're going to do, I believe that at this point, it's Ticket Tomato. We haven't solidified the tickets yet, but it will be. Those and the flyers will be coming out very shortly. So you want to stay tuned and look for those in your dispensaries. I'm hoping Paul will have them up here at the clinic. And so you'll be able to go and do that. And then there'll be available places for you to pick up those tickets too.
Okay, if someone wants to contact you about coming to the event, what's the best way?
You can hit me. Why don't you hit me on Facebook if you'd like to do that?
And so it's Nickie
D Dank.
And Nickie is Nickie.
Yes.
D.
And I'm on IG, Instagram, and I would just love to hear from you and just be watching.
Put out how you spell Nickie D Dank, because I know that.
NICKIEDDANK.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And so you're on Instagram and Facebook, and you can look for those
absolutely.
right now. You and I and my wife Teresa recently had an adventure south of the border. We went down to Cannabis in Puerto Vallarta at the folks from the...
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Carlos. Carlos Cervantes and the group of folks in Jalisco organized.
Wonderful people.
Yeah, they are. And we had quite an adventure that started before we even got out of the airport. First, I should say, there was a period recently where the Supreme Court of Mexico struck down all marijuana laws. But it seems that the local law enforcement there haven't got used to that yet. So you were coming through customs. You just got your very first passport, and you were going through customs the very first time. You want to tell our audience how that went down?
Let's just say I'm over 50, okay? And I've got my first passport, so I'm darn excited about it. And I'm lucky to be able to go on this trip and very fortunate and so excited.
And we were in line just in front of you.
You were in line just in front of me and miraculously made your way
And
through.
both of us got pulled over for an inspection. And
Yeah.
I've had them go through my
And
luggage.
I wasn't doing all this laughing, I can tell you that.
No.
It wasn't funny or cute. It's very uncomfortable.
It seems to me that they first saw your vapor pen on the x-ray. Was that what tipped them off, you think?
You know, I don't know if that was particularly what it was that did that. There was no actual, I mean, you couldn't, unless you smoked the vapor pen, you didn't know what I was smoking. You didn't know if it was tobacco or cannabis or THC or
But once they
CBD
went through your purse, they found some pre-rolls that you had in, we call them tubes, right?
And I told the gentleman when he first saw the pen, I said to him that it was CBD. I did state that. And he said, no CBD legal in my country.
And the thing is, that's not true. Because all the marijuana laws had been stricken down in Mexico.
Good job, Mexico. We're super proud of you, too, for that.
Yeah, the Mexican Supreme Court ordered them to regulate the market about 3 years ago. But since they didn't regulate it, they struck down all the marijuana laws on personal possession.
And it's,
And so... But that's not what the guy at the border told you.
No.
He had a racket going on there, didn't he?
Because he started, I believe, was it $1,000?
They wanted you to pay them money.
$1,000.
And he wouldn't let you see his name or his ID number, right?
He said it wasn't my business, and everything that he wanted to tell me, he put onto a telephone, and it spoke English to me to make sure I understood. Whether I spoke Spanish, English, or French. So he wouldn't have known. He just put it on his phone.
He sent you to a special ATM that was located in the customs area. Now, what other reason?
Other officers.
What other reason would they have an ATM inside the customs area except to take out money to make bribes? And so these guys have gotten bribes for so long, now that it's legal.
So many years.
They don't know how to break away from that illegal money.
They sure don't. And one just kind of, they pass the buck definitely, because it's not just one agent that you're dealing with. It's several agents, because as you're standing there, one tells one, then one tells one. Then they come back with a different number. It went from 1,000 down to 750, right? I believe.
Okay, I don't remember.
And then it was 500. And then
You're saying I don't have that money.
I mean, I just have, I tried to convince them, of course, that I wasn't rich and I didn't have that. And they don't really, it's American and...
So in the end,
in our song.
how did it, we must be rich to be traveling, right? So
right.
In the end,
for cannabis
what
reasons.
happened there that day?
It was very embarrassing. It was very scary. Thank gosh for your wife for staying with me and rescuing me and helping finance the situation, because I went over to the ATM, and being that I'd never been in Mexico before, I wasn't quite sure which buttons went to which, and as you're being so nervous, I guess.
Yeah, you were pretty
and me
shook
being
up.
a patient for several different reasons, it kind of heightened some of those, flared up for me a little bit, and brought some very unneeded anxiety into my life for the first 5 hours into Mexico, because it took about that long for me to get it out of my system. Mm-hmm. Until everybody kind of...
So you were down on the beach.
Talked me down. Yes. Until we went to the beach, and that's kind of when I kind of released it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was tough, though. It's hard because when they send you over to the ATM, They don't just send you over to an ATM. There's no way to get out of the customs area.
Yeah, you're locked inside.
You're locked
customs
in there, and they send you over to an ATM area where there's already 2 officers there that have been radioed, so they know exactly what you're coming over there for. So they stand directly over your shoulder like this the whole time. So I wouldn't know which buttons I was pushing at all.
So
and
it was all in Spanish.
My card
you didn't,
yes.
You didn't. And then the fact that you didn't tell your bank you were traveling to Mexico might have set
I
off
did tell them.
Oh, okay. So
but
didn't
because
set off
we
a fraud
ran
alert.
it through there so many times with these agents and not knowing what I was doing, and they're not trying to help me.
Mm-hmm. But in the end, you weren't able to get any money out of the ATM.
And I had what I had on me and what your wife had on her, and thank goodness for that. And that's the only thing that rescued me. You know what I mean? And we couldn't have, at that particular moment, it was conducive and for Paul to go on ahead of us and find our party, because we had people that were there to pick us up and escort us to the next day. So I think that was very conducive.
Yeah, I told Teresa that she had to stay with you and not leave you until...
No.
But I couldn't wait with all of our luggage.
And he needed to go on and make sure that we had our connect with our folks.
Their car.
Yeah, so that needed to happen. So it felt very, it was really uncomfortable. Then they took me into an office, and he got onto some computer system with my passport, told me if I ever come to Mexico and I bring a vapory device, that I will not be allowed into their country. And I said, okay.
But in the end, they didn't take your marijuana joints. No, they didn't take your vapor
they let me
pen.
Keep all of it.
You got to keep all of your cannabis, but
they
did keep
my money and
your
Teresa's
money. And so in the end, how much was it? 300 or 350?
No, 425 or something, wasn't it? Didn't it end up being? I believe it ended up being around 400.
Okay.
425 or something.
And so you ended up giving them this bribe,
mm-hmm.
and they wouldn't tell you their name, but you came out and a little lighter from this experience.
I did,
it
but
wasn't
I stuck up for myself. I did say a few things to those gentlemen, and I am saying gentlemen loosely.
Yeah,
but
and you had a medical permit with you at the time. I
sure did. I had a lot of different things on me, even
from Oregon.
Oh yeah, and I have Social Security card, disability cards. I mean, anything they wanted, and that's the United States of America that gives you disability cards. That's the federal thing. It's not a state thing. So they should have recognized that right away, or gave me a little respect for that part.
Mm-hmm.
But they did not. There was not, they didn't beat me or, hang me up on my toes or nothing like that. But it was just a very uncomfortable situation. And then there was...
And it went on for about 30 minutes or so, right?
Yes, and then there was a couple that was coming out of their office where they collect the green, and they were coming out and they were talking to your wife and I, and they were saying, oh my gosh, what happened to you? The same thing happened to us, and they found this many, and they let us keep it, and we only had to pay $50.
Wow.
So I'm kind of thinking, and I don't want to be so sexist, but I believe that I was a female by myself.
Mm-hmm. They might have seen some jewelry or stuff that made them think they want to get your money.
Okay.
Anyway, so, but we went on to have a great time at Cannabis. We went and stayed with the folks from 420 Guadalajara and the Jalisco Cup.
Just wonderful.
And stayed in a couple different places.
Yeah.
And then the actual event was a couple nights in... an all-inclusive resort right on the beach, which was pretty nice.
Mm-hmm. It was super nice. And I would like to say, if you've ever or never tried mezcal, be very careful.
Okay. There's a lot of tequila and mezcal down there, that's for sure.
I loved it. I had so much fun. The people are so wonderful. Everybody says hola.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Everybody says hola. I mean, they treated us, besides some of our difficult moments, the general people were absolutely, hospitality was awesome.
So speaking of difficult moments, I had one of my own for the first time in Mexico a few days later. We were at a little beachfront dinner, and we went out. There's a group of about 20 of us, an international group. There's my wife and you and I, and I think one other American, but we had people from Colombia, people from all across Mexico there, a group of about 20 of us. And one of our friends from the United States insisted on lighting up a bowl. And so he passed it to me. We're on the beach and it's windy and it's nighttime. And while we're standing there and he's lighting the lighter over the bowl, a couple of police officers come up and they try to harass me. So they asked for my ID.
I was there. I saw it.
So I showed them my Oregon medical marijuana card. And then they said, come with me. And I said, no, I'm not coming with you. At that point, I was really angry about what had happened to you, because marijuana is now legal. There are no laws against it there anymore.
Correct.
You know, in the state of California, the ex-governor, the other Governor Brown, Jerry Brown, he vetoed a bill on marijuana public consumption because he said people have a God-given right to smoke marijuana at public beaches. And so it's perfectly allowed there. And the thing is,
go ahead,
Jerry. I didn't even smoke any. It was this other guy's pipe. I didn't have any cannabis on me.
No.
I didn't even get the thing lit.
He had his medical
and so
card
I had
on
my
him,
medical.
though.
But once I wouldn't go with him, I tried to grab my card back from him. And by this time, our other 20 friends started to surround us.
Yes.
And they started talking to these two police officers. Pretty soon they came over and said, Paul, you just go and we're going to take care of this. And about 10 minutes later, they came back and gave me my card. Well, it turns out one of them had bribed one police officer for $50, and the other one had bribed another police officer for $50. Neither one of the people who bribed the police officers realized that the other had paid the bribe at the time.
Yep.
But they got the card back and brought it to me.
And they didn't want pesos.
Yeah, they wanted U.S. dollars. And so
they
don't let them
US
shake
dollars.
you down with marijuana in Mexico anymore. It's legal.
It really
You know,
is,
I was
you
upset
guys.
that they paid them the bribe, because it's legal there.
And we were really lucky because one of the places that we stayed to when I first had my experience at the airport before your experience, we got to stay with a really nice attorney. And she's the one who really helped me come down to earth again. Well,
Carlos's mom.
Yeah, her tequila. And Carlos's mom, she was wonderful and very intelligent and really tells the truth about her country.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She's very honest. And it was really, really refreshing and didn't make me feel like I was somewhere different. She made me feel like it was okay to be disgusted by the way I was treated. And then by the way he was treated, and witnessing that these officers, unfortunately, they come across, we think we have it bad here in the United States of America with our officers. And I hear people talk about it all the time, and the judgments and things. If you've never been to Mexico and you want to see some real law enforcement going on, check it out. They ride around in trucks at night, about 8 deep, with machine guns and machetes. And that's no lie. And so, I mean, we have to kind of take a look at some of the things we say and disrespect some of the things that really makes us free. If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And not on anybody's particular side or anything, just trying to keep it even. And the things that we take for granted are things that in other countries they would kill for the luxury, or just to be treated similar into some of the ways. Not saying that there's not mass destruction in the United States of America, because there is in so many realms, but it really was an eye-opener for me to see that and never have seen that before. just on TV.
It was a little bit more adventure than we had anticipated. That's
Yes,
for
and you
certain.
forget about Teresa's to do at Walmart.
Oh, yeah,
we don't
yeah.
Even talk about that.
That didn't have anything to do with marijuana though.
Yeah.
That was they wanted to take her purse from her.
But
or
it was
something.
very
She wouldn't- going into
I was
Walmart.
embarrassed.
the officers were just a really different,
It was a communication
different
problem
treating
in my
to us.
Yeah.
Very different. And they definitely can tell the Americans from anybody else, that's for sure.
I had an anxiety
So-
attack there.
We're gonna go back and talk about the 420 event, or what are you
Let's do
calling the event?
I think it's Nickie D Dank's 420 honors.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand you were going to give me an honor, but I'm not going to be there. I had already made an agreement to go down into central Mexico, to near the town of Puebla, to the Copa Lara, and so I'm going down for that for a week into Mexico in Mexico City, and it's about 100 miles south of Mexico City.
That's going to be so much fun.
It will be the largest pyramid in the world, bigger than the ones in
That
Egypt.
is so
It's there.
cool.
It's called Cholula, and Cholula, the Spanish tore off the top of the pyramid and built a church on top, and that's the biggest pyramid.
Isn't that a Catholic church?
Yeah, it's a Catholic
yeah,
church.
Yeah.
Most all the churches in
Yeah.
Mexico are Catholic churches.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church did the same thing in Mexico City in terms of tearing down a big Aztec temple in central Mexico City. That's now the old town of Mexico City.
I'll be
So there's a
darned.
it's Zocalo Square, which is the biggest square.
Zocalo Square.
Yeah, it's in the center of Mexico City. There's a church, and then right next to it's this archaeological museum around the Aztec temple that got torn down. So they're there directly off of Zocalo Square
I'll be
in
darned.
Mexico City.
And by the way, I learned that we were in 3 states when
Yeah.
we were there. We were in Nayarit,
Yeah.
Puerto Vallarta,
Jalisco.
and help me.
I'm-
Salud.
Oh, Saluya.
Damn.
We went to the town of Saluya.
That was so cool because it's very artsy there and everything's decorated and they have a lot of the lanterns and it was just, that was very cool to look at. Very, very cool to look at. It's so colorful there and
Well, I
it's
know
just
you'll be
lovely.
going back and linking up with your newfound friends there at some point in the near future.
I can't wait. I talk about it too whenever I come across somebody that happens to be Hispanic. I tell them what a good time I had in Mexico, and I go through the whole thing, and they're just like, okay. And I said, no, you don't understand. I was in the homes. I didn't stay in just a resort.
Yeah.
I was part of the family.
Yeah.
They made me Mexican lemonade. I was like, and you know how
And
they do it?
mezcal.
And that takes a lot of lemons for those ladies to make that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally straight lemonade. I mean, it's so cool. It was cool.
Is there anything else you want to talk about, Nikki?
I would love to talk about, can I mention the budtender honorees?
Yeah, please do.
I'd love to be able to do that. So there are 6 honorees. The first one that I would like
And these
to mention-
honors will be given out at the 420.
at the 420 event, somewhere between, I don't have the concrete time, but it's maybe between 7:10 and probably 9, somewhere like that. The first person is Patrick Young. Patrick Young works for Stony Only Clackamas. Patrick is just a joy to have in the community, a joy to have around. If you've ever come across Patrick, his personality is wonderful, and he's always wanting to help. Always, always, always. So Patrick, definitely can't wait to see you on 420. I've talked to all of you, so you all are aware that I'm going to mention your names, hopefully. The next one's Trish Jagan. Trish has been in the community for years. She's a wonderful woman. She's she's just a delight to. She's been helpful at Hemp Fest. She's been helpful at Hemp Stock. She's just one of those ladies. Her and her son used to just pitch in and help. And that's all I can really say. And she's a lovely individual, very knowledgeable. She's over at Cannabis. And she has been there for many years. And so, Trish, I can't wait to present that award to you. The next one is Mary Haddock. Mary is a interesting individual in this community because Mary is not a partaker. She is not a consumer. That's not what she does. She lets that be part of her family's plight and medical patients and things like that. That's part of her family, but she supports it, and she supports it enough to know the ins and outs of the dispensary world. And she's very, very smart when it comes to that. And this woman needs to be honored for the mere fact that she's not a consumer, but she sure celebrates this plant with us. Mm-hmm. The next one's probably Trish Searles. Trish has worked as a dispensary manager at the 24-hour dispensary. She has been at Graham Central. She has worked many, many places from the medical on to recreational. This woman has never been acknowledged by her peers, and it's time for that to happen also. The next one is Leslie Oberman. Leslie has been a heck of a volunteer for Hemp for many different events. She is a personality plus, great lady, and she works at Wild West Emporium over on Malala Avenue. And she's a key holder over there, and she's worked her way up the ranks and been just really pushing hard. And I really, really adore that lady. The last one is Toba Scruggs. Toba, besides being part of my family, is a young man that's 24 years old. He just turned 25 in February. 25 years old, and he is a man that has had an enormous amount of knowledge since our club and since the first dispensary job that he could take at 21. He has been employee of the month at a lot of different times at his work, advances, managers, different things. And for a young person like that, it's a great representation. And that needs to be acknowledged too, because it really starts out, where you start working at as a younger person and how you're treated is really what goes on with you in life at other jobs and how you feel you'll be treated at those places too. So it's good to show a positive side and to recognize these people for their longevity in this community and what they've given to it.
So you'll be giving out these honors at the Nickie D Dank 420
honors
party.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
You'll be able to get tickets to that at
I believe
Tomato?
Ticket Tomato.
Ticket Tomato. Okay.
Yes. And that'll be coming up, and we'll let you know that. I'll make sure I put that on my page. I'll make sure.
And
that
so
the
your
flyers
page
go
is
out.
Nickie D Dank at Facebook and Instagram.
Yes.
Okay.
Come say hi.
And how much your ticket's going to be? Do you know?
I believe that tickets are going to be $10, and then we've got a VIP area,
reasonable.
and that VIP area are $50.
I see.
And we have several sponsors already that we have already gotten.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have, it's going to be a very, very fun event. Lots of music.
So J-Mac and Dub will be there.
Yes.
And they're doing
Bad Habitat,
Bad
Pony
Habitat.
Boy, Young Gates, and etc. There'll be more.
Okay.
And there's also going to be comedy. We're going to have a platform for comedy, and that's going to be really nice. And that's going to be Amazon Queen. Belinda Giles is going to do that. Her and her son are going to do a whole family comedy act. So it's going to be very enlightening.
All right.
And she's hilarious. And, we've done lots of things together. And she's a wonderful lady. Very funny. Very, very, very funny.
Okay. The Nickie D Dank 420. I'm going to call it an extravaganza. How do you like that? Let's just call
love
it
that.
an extravaganza.
Ooh, and this is
so-
going to be annual. So I'm going to try to do this every year as long as I'm breathing. And hopefully maybe, my kids or my family will carry it on after that.
We'll see. We'll see.
So I
All
just
right.
think it's positive. We hear so much negative. We need more positive.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about right now, Nikki?
I would like to say that I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy
All
to
right.
be alive, and I'm happy for the experiences in the 17 years, and I have a lot of people to thank and be grateful for, and it would take enormously a long time to be able to do that. But
We listed some of them earlier.
yes, and I think two probably highlights. Can I say highlights?
Yeah.
Two highlights that probably have to do with you, Mr. Stanford, is being able to grow and be in a garden with Mr. Nelson, Willie Nelson, and the band. Like that's been a highlight in my life. Meeting Jack Hare, huge highlight. And being able to call him Uncle Jack at least a few times before we lost him. And the list goes on. But these are just highlight moments of my life, and being able to be on the stage with Willie and be able to smoke on the stage with Willie Nelson in the band is like, those are things that people dream to do, and I was able to do that. So those are really big on my list. The Skunk Magazine Women of Weed is a big thing, big honor.
You were one of those.
And John Varicose, Skunk Magazine. Thank you, John. You're in Canada, and I miss you, and I hope one day we get together and hang out. Because you're a very nice man, and you've been very supportive of me over time. And
We
I
had
really appreciate it.
Julie Chiriallo on the show about 6 months or so ago.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's my sister.
Yeah.
My sister in Cannabis.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Nikki. It's good to have you back on the
Thank
show.
you.
We'll be talking more about future events. I'm sure we'll have you back on soon. Give you a little fist bump.
Always.
All right.
I'll
Keep
see you at
watching.
420. You guys come on out. I'd love to see you. You're going to have a blast.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. Have a good night and restore hemp. Good night.